Hello YouTube, my name is Myles Anderson. I'm a professional joke explainer, and today I'm explaining the jokes of Tucker Carlson, one of the best comedians working today.
For the one and only Tucker Carlson.
So it looks like we're at, this is a part of the Sworn Enemy tour. His very famous stand-up tour he took a few years ago here. There he is. Huge crowds. Oh man. Very funny guys. A lot of comics. Jordan Peterson from Elon Musk, very famous business comedian.
Is that a democracy? No, it's not. It's not a free country. It's a very scary place. And that's exactly what Canada has become under Justin Trudeau. And the
Tucker Carlson, I don't know if you know this, but Tucker Carlson had a late night comedy show on Fox News for a very long time. One of the funniest shows on TV.
You decide to tell the truth about something, you are filled with this, I don't want to get supernatural, but you are filled with this power from somewhere
look at the set design for this. That was one of his last specials.
You feel it every day.
Turning Point
the more
USA.
You tell the truth, the stronger you become.
No Rogaine in the propane bloods. The chosen one, half the living proof. With the
there he is.
From the city of truth.
Oh man, this is gonna be so good. Yeah, just so there's a bit of a musical interlude here, I think. With Kid Rock, very famous music comedian.
Holy smokes!
There he is. Here we go.
Thank you. I'm really honored. I think that's my friend Kid Rock in the background. Thank you truly for having me. Wow, that was the wildest intro I've had ever. Someone just gave me this t-shirt, which I just love so much, I'm actually going to wear it in the privacy of my own home. Al freaking Berta, baby.
In the privacy, that's a funny joke there. So, yeah, he's making a joke of the fact that if he wore a t-shirt with the word freaking on it, that, of course, would be very offensive to people and their families.
What a great province this is, what a great country this is. In fact, I should be told, I've never said this to anyone, including my wife, but I know that in Canada it's official policy that coming out of the closet is good, unless you're the Prime Minister.
Great joke there. Okay, so he's in Canada. For some reason, that's amazing. The Canadians must have been very excited. They're very excited to have any Americans up there. It's always a big deal if an American visits. There's usually a big parade of some sort, but also to have a big name American comic like Tucker Carlson up there must have been a huge deal for his Sworn Enemy tour, obviously. So this is great. He makes a great joke off the top, but a local reference making fun of the Canadian Prime Minister being gay, which is a classic Canadian joke. That goes back as far as Canadian politics does. So great reference there. Very funny stuff.
I'm going to reveal something about myself that I've never revealed, which is that I am part Canadian.
Oh, wow.
And yes, I am. I actually am part Canadian. And I was thinking this morning, I was like, I always say I'm the only American who's like legitimately interested in Canada, and I am. And I always have been. And I wonder, why am I so obsessed with Canada? And I thought, because I'm part Canadian. My great-grandfather, actually
It's kind of a funny joke there. No one cares about Canada. That's kind of the joke.
Yeah, last week Tucker Carlson called Canadians mentally retarded.
So to say that he is obsessed with Canada is very, very funny, because no one cares.
Father's family was in the colonies, and then they brought democracy, and they're like, we're out. We're going to Nova Scotia. And so they spent a couple hundred years there. The refuses, they're still there, by the way. I think they're all liberals. But and then my great-grandfather's like, I'm going to try that again. So he comes to the United States, and I'm here as a result. So I feel it. In me is Canadian. And I've been all over your country, and I've been everywhere in your country, and I just think it's a remarkable place. And I think people don't quite understand what Canada is because so much of it is bumped right up against our border. And I would argue, no offense, that the least impressive places in Canada are right up against our border. But once you get past that, it's just unbelievable. I've been to this city a lot because of your mountain.
Huge burn to all the Canadians that live near the U.S. border. Tucker Carlson thinks you suck.
Which I just find beyond belief. Really,
So as
the
most
prettiest
Canadians.
places I've ever been. This country is the prettiest country I've ever been in. The second biggest country in the world, bigger than the United States, deeper oil reserves than the United States, more natural resources than the United States, and 1/9 the population.
A lot of great data comedy there, just sort of going over the data of a country. It's sort of very funny when comedians come from out of town. It's good to get sort of a survey of their demographics and of their resource extraction statistics. It's always very good to establish that you know a lot about the area's economy that you're in. Very funny.
And when I hear the lunatics that run your government are like, our population's growing, we're so excited. I'm like, really? You want to live in a crowded country? 40 million people in the world's second biggest country? That sounds like the kind of place I want to live. Like, what are you even talking about, you morons? But anyway.
Funny little riff there, ragging on the Canadian politicians. It's always very funny when, an extremely wealthy man comes in and dunks on the elites of the country, just show that he's one of the folks.
So I've come to Canada a lot, and every time I come, so many things strike me. First and foremost, the natural beauty, the unbelievable natural beauty, prettier than Switzerland, in my opinion. And the second thing I notice is the politeness of the people. That's real. And the third thing I notice is that all the comedians left decades ago. And it brings it out in me. And
Rule of threes there. The third thing's the funniest thing. Talk about all the comedians leaving Canada. That is a very funny observation.
Making fun of Canadians, and as I've already told you, and I hope it's obvious, is done with love. But I just can't control myself.
There are a few Canadian comics that left Canada. They're very famous. Ted Cruz was a very famous Canadian comedian before he moved to the United States. Gavin McInnes, another very famous Canadian comic. So he is right about that. A lot of Canadian comics do leave Canada, where they can find a bigger audience in America.
Because no one will ever laugh at your joke. And so every time I go to Toronto, which I try not to do, but I do wind up there, every time I check in a hotel, I'm like, you guys have hot water? Like, where'd you get all the electricity? This is unbelievable. And they always have the same responses. We've had electricity for a long time, eh?
Great accent.
Like, no, it's a joke. You don't really have sled dog parking in front. I know that. No, we haven't had sled dogs in a long time, eh? And so...
Great accent. Canadians do sound just like that. They sound like fucking idiots.
I've told so many sled dog and Molson jokes. It's just, and I'll never stop.
Very
but one of the reasons I do it is because I do think it's important to laugh at your circumstances, not simply because it makes you feel better, though it does, but because it gives you perspective.
It's always important as a comedian to remind the audience that it feels good to laugh. That'll sort of loosen them up and get them ready to laugh. So masterful comedic technique here.
And them. And humor requires some distance, some critical distance, both from yourself and from your surroundings. And you can't really see things clearly until you have that. And so if you have a country where the funny people feel like they have to leave, that's a huge problem. And that's the first problem. The second problem is you can't really be effective as a political movement or a resistance movement, which effectively you are, if you don't laugh at your enemies. Because not only are they evil, and they are, they're also ludicrous. They're ludicrous. And it's really important to say that because it saps their power immediately. Laughing at somebody, and if you're a married man, you know that, no, it's true. Your wife could come and hit you in the face with a 2x4, and that would be less painful than having her laugh derisively at you, particularly when you get out of the shower. That would just end it for you. That would end it.
So that visual there, that little joke, so it's kind of part of a main bit here. He's talking about laughing at your enemies, which of course is very important, but also he sets up a little scene there of his wife laughing at him when he comes out of the shower, which is a very funny visual to imagine. A fully naked Tucker Carlson, because it's almost hard to imagine. He's usually in a suit. It's hard to imagine that he would be naked at any point in his life, but he does get naked to bathe sometimes. So that's a funny thing to imagine. So that's the joke there.
Your male power would evaporate like a puddle on a hot day, like you'd be done, because it has that effect. And so to look at your enemies, like let's say you had some sort of weird prime minister like to dress up in fussy costumes. It would be super important to point that out a lot, like relentlessly. Somebody told me last night that his base, I was asked, we had this wonderful dinner last night with two of the most famous people in Canada, probably the two most famous people, Lord Black and my friend Dr. Jordan Peterson, and I asked...
It's always, again, he's more endearing himself to the crowd. He mentions that the friends he was hanging out with were black. That's always important to make people, let them know you have black friends, which means that, you know, you can say all sorts of stuff and it's okay. Also, he mentions Jordan Peterson, another very famous Canadian comedian that works a lot in the United States now, who unfortunately had to leave because the audience just wasn't big enough.
I asked, like, is there anyone in the country who supports this guy? He's so I mean, I know him only, I've never met him. I only know him through television. I know his cousin, Gavin Newsom, pretty well, but I don't know him.
There, Gavin Newsom. He's like the governor of California, so he's making fun of that the Canadian Prime Minister knows Gavin Newsom, which is a very funny scene to imagine. These two guys knowing each other is just absurd.
Is there anyone who takes him seriously? And everyone in the room said, oh, yeah. Young people, particularly young women, take him very seriously. They love him. And I thought, there's really only one way to combat that, and that's by pointing out what an absurd poser this guy is. He's like a ridiculous figure. Like, you should dislike and resist Justin Trudeau and his government to the maximum extent of your ability. But
okay, so I suppose Justin Trudeau is one of the sworn enemies of the Sworn Enemy Tour, so this is going to be a real roast comedy show coming up here.
Before you do that, you should just laugh at him until you can't breathe. Seriously. The guy's like, he's showing up for a costume party when no one else is. There's no costume party, and there's Justin Trudeau. Like speaking as some sort of moral voice. Weird little cross-dresser. So anyway, that's my first piece of advice.
All right, so that was the first bit there. So he's just his point is saying that you should laugh at your enemies to remove their power from them, which is a very funny joke because he's making fun of the Canadian Prime Minister who probably has less power than an upper manager at a sort of top US company. So kind of funny to be removing power from someone who barely has a jet that functions on a regular basis.
My second piece of advice, once you've done that, which is very effective, and I know it's not the Canadian way because it's such a polite society that everyone feels morally bound to take everyone else's point of view very seriously and sort of nod gravely and pretend to consider their perspective. But there are some perspectives that aren't in fact perspectives, they're attacks on you. And that's...
So a little bit of a mic bump there. He's trying to signal again that the joke has happened there. Common comedian technique to just give the mic a little bump, let the crowd know that a joke has happened and it is time to laugh.
The main thing that I want to say in the short time allotted today is that you should recognize what is happening to you. This is not a political debate to which you've been invited to participate. This is a destruction of you and your culture and your beliefs and your children and your future as a country. And that's not overstatement.
A little bit political there.
It's provable statistically. So just take 3 steps back. If you have a government that is giving fentanyl to your children, as they are in BC, I notice your premier has a no fentanyl to kids policy, God bless her. I know, and you're applauding. I mean, and I'm applauding, and I'm grateful. But how distorted is your world where you have to applaud the one politician's like, you know, we're not going to give fentanyl to the kids today. Okay, but then take 2 steps further back from that.
So I'm not sure if Canada was giving fentanyl to kids. I'm gonna have to research that. If they were, you know, I don't know if that's very funny or not. I don't think it's generally very funny, unless they, of course, were not doing that. And Tucker says they were doing that, which is funny because it's not true. And so imagining that is an absurdity, which is then funny.
Ask yourself, if someone's giving fentanyl to your children, what's kind of the message of that? Well, they're trying to kill your children, obviously. Fentanyl? It's the #1 cause of death under 40 in the United States. Number one in the whole country, followed by suicide. If you want to know where we are, we're about 2 years behind you. And it's only because we have a louder media space than you do that we aren't ahead of you. But if someone's giving fentanyl to your children without telling you, they're trying to kill your children, which are your inheritance, or the only meaningful thing you will ever produce on earth, okay, or your children. That's the first thing to know.
That is kind of a bit of a funny exaggeration joke there, where he says your children are the only meaningful thing you'll produce on earth. I don't know if that's true. I remember in grade 7, I made a birdhouse, which it's probably going to be around a lot longer after I'm dead, and that's kind of I know that my legacy is secure. So I don't know if you necessarily need to have kids to produce a meaningful thing, but kind of a funny exaggeration by Tucker here, because of course, there's all sorts of meaningful things you can do in your life.
Second, if they are trying to kill you, and by the way, I know I'm offending everyone, even this group, because no one in Canada wants to talk about anything. It's like an Episcopalian Christmas dinner. And I grew up in that world, so I know everyone's had like 3 too many, and then someone will blurt out, "You wrecked my childhood!" And then everyone will sit there in silence. It's so awesome.
Yeah, great joke there, laughing when he's laughing at his own bit to let everybody know that a joke has happened. And the joke, of course, was making fun of, repressed families not able to talk about their issues and getting drunk and blurting out something and then pretending it didn't happen. Very funny observation and a very funny scene and joke there by Tucker Carlson. One of the best.
But Anglo-Canada, like Anglo everywhere, doesn't like to say anything out loud. But let me just do it anyway. If you're killing 50,000 of your citizens, if the government is doing that through the MAID program, and a lot of them are not actually terminally ill, they're just sad, and the government is encouraging them to submit to being killed by the government, and then won't release the recent statistics, like, what is that? What is that? Yeah, it's genocide. That's exactly what it is. It's killing large groups of people. And who are those people, by the way? We don't know, because your government hasn't released the stats. What percentage of those were born in Canada? I'd bet right around 100%. So if you're a government, you have the duty to your citizens, people who are from here, people whose ancestors built the place, not exclusively to them, but primarily to them, to your citizens. Like, why else do you exist except to serve your citizens? And if you're targeting your citizens, how many people who arrived in Canada in the last 10 years have opted into the MAID program? I don't know the answer. I'd bet around 0. It's all people who are from here. Another...
That's a bit of a dark subject to talk about for a joke here. But the MAID program in Canada is when people are terminally ill, they have the option to undergo voluntary euthanasia instead of waiting to see how much pain the human body can possibly endure. So he's Tucker's saying that this is a genocide, but that might be a slight exaggeration on his part there. So I think he's getting to a punchline here at some point.
Government brags, "Oh, we're saving money because they died." That's the darkest thing I can imagine. I bet there's 0 conversation about that in this country, because I know this country and I know what it's like. It's too horrible. No one wants to talk about it. You should talk about it. But more than anything, you should internalize the message of that, which is they hate me. They hate me to the point they're willing to kill me, which they are. And the third thing is, notice the erosion of your most basic civil liberties, not the ones granted to you by the crown, but the ones granted to you by God. And those would include the freedom of speech, which is inalienable.
That's very funny. So he is saying that we should recognize the rights granted to us by God and not by the crown. So he's kind of making fun of the fact that Canada still has the monarchy as their head of state. So very funny here. Of course, he's making the reference to God. I think everybody knows that God did write the U.S. Constitution, I believe, based on... I learned a lot of stuff from Tucker Carlson, and I believe that God did write the U.S. Constitution a few thousand years ago, sometime around the Noah's Ark fiasco.
Cannot be taken from you, no matter who is in Ottawa, or as we say, Ottawa, which, by the way, is the correct pronunciation according to my friends in the Ojibwa community. I've pronounced it that way every time on television, and I get all these angry, you're pronouncing it incorrectly. You don't even know the name. It's like, yeah, I know a lot about Canada. I'm doing it on purpose to make fun of you so you will laugh, but you won't. And then
Tucker Carlson getting a little heated at the comment section. Make sure you guys, if you ever comment on Tucker Carlson videos, just keep it nice. Don't say anything mean about the guy, because he does read all the comments.
Jibbo Leader writes in and he goes, yeah, all the whites are wrong. It's actually Ottawa. Go Ottawa! Anyway, it doesn't matter who's in the Prime Minister's office. Your rights remain the same because you were born with them, because you are not a slave, you're a human being. And you have inherent dignity because God made you. That's just a fact. And if
Amen.
they're taking those rights away piecemeal and doing so in the name of public safety, even as they make the public sphere much more dangerous, which they have, in case you haven't noticed, Canada has a lot more violent crime now than it did 20 years ago. Have you?
So I think that's a bit of a callback to the maid joke that he had earlier. So that he's saying it's a bit of a contradiction where he says that you shouldn't have the right to want to die. That you should be kept alive against your will. So that's kind of a bit of a contradiction joke there. I think it maybe is leading towards a larger point he's trying to make here, but very funny so far.
Noticed, of course, you live here. And if they're telling you you can't defend yourself against that crime, we're going to disarm you, you can't protect your life or your family, and you're like, oh yeah, it's for the public safety, it's just not a big deal. These are weapons of war. No, they're weapons of self-defense, which you need and deserve as a free person, not a slave. And then they're telling you you can't complain about it. And then they're subsidizing the media to the point where all of your big media outlets, which are...
God, honestly, this is kind of a bit of a political rant here. This isn't really a funny section, but he is right. I mean, Canada fucking sucks ass. You can't have any guns here, even though there's thousands of polar bears, White Walkers, Russians. Literally, most Canadians have 6 to 7 confirmed kills by the time they reach 30 years old. It's a very violent and hostile place, and the Canadian government just won't let Canadians have micro Uzis to defend themselves. So he is right. It is a real piece of shit country. So don't ever go there.
Disgusting. Our state media, because they're taking state cash. Do you watch CBC? I do occasionally. I can turn in any hour of the day and I will learn that I am racist.
CBC stands for the Communist Broadcast Corporation. It's Canada's largest media company.
For driving an SUV and not being trans. That's the whole schedule of CBC programming. But interpret that. That's not woke. Oh, it's woke. I hate the woke crap. It doesn't mean anything. They hate
true.
you.
If you don't drive an SUV, you are trans.
What they're saying. They're saying that you are bad. That's exactly what they're saying. Don't lie to yourselves. That's all I'm saying. And we are very delusional in the United States because we're so distracted by stuff and electronic devices and the promise of next day delivery from Amazon of brightly colored plastic crap made in China that we tend to be slow to figure out what's going on. But Canada has a different restraint, which is a cultural one. It's an specific Anglo-cultural one, which is just like, I don't want to deal with that. That's too uncomfortable. But in your heart, anyway, even if you voice it to no one but yourself, know what the message is. And the message is, you are bad. I mean, I'm going to say the most controversial thing ever. I watched when Montreal was cleansed of its Anglo legacy. And I'm not anti-French, just for the record, at all. But I am Anglo, and I had friends in Montreal. And in the span of a generation, that's all gone. They were forced out. And they're like, okay, I guess we'll go to Ontario. What? My grandfather built this city. I'm not going anywhere. How about that?
I didn't know that I didn't know of the cultural genocide of English-speaking Canadians, but this is all information to me. Very concerning stuff. I'm getting ready to write a lot of letters after this.
That never occurred to anyone, because no one could say out loud what was actually happening. This was a series of acts of hostility aimed at you because of things that you didn't choose, like how you were born. And once you will keep allowing that,
Yeah, it is true. You can't change what language you're born into. I was born English, and so I can't speak French because it's a genetic thing. So he does make a good point there. Not really a funny point, but a good point.
Have no future, okay? So if they're limiting your freedom to say what you think, which is the freedom of conscience, the most basic of all freedom, your freedom to defend yourself and your family against bodily harm, which has got to be a twin to the first one. If they're taking away your voting power by changing the population of your country, which they are doing, and no one wants to talk about that, Canada has the highest immigration rate in the world per capita. And shut up, racist! That's not racist. I don't care if they're coming from New Zealand. I don't care if you're taking the population of Stockholm and moving them to Canada. If you change the population of the country, you change the country. And you dilute the voting power of the people who are vested in that country, the people who are born there, who have lived there long term, who understand the history and the culture of the country, who are bought in. And all of a sudden, their vote means much less. It's math. You guys do that. Math. That's horrifying that this is happening. And there's no public debate over it whatsoever. Why do you think that's happening?
So he's going off on a bit of a tangent here. I think he's going to get back to the jokes pretty soon. Or this might be a sort of he might be building tension here for a big punchline coming up.
Is it for economic reasons? I'd be kind of okay with that. If someone could stand up and say, we're totally changing the population of Canada because we think it's better for our economy. Okay, tell me how. We can have rational conversations. We're adults. I'm a citizen. This is my government too. Tell me how that works. But they can't, because that's not true. Look at your housing prices. Look at the strain on your services. Look at your healthcare system, which no Canadian I meet brags about anymore. And one of the main reasons is it's overburdened. There are too many people. Oh, we need population growth. Really? Tell me why. Tell me why all of these slogans make sense. I've watched Canadian hockey from time to time.
Honestly, too, like after watching this stand-up act, I'm not sure if I'd ever want to go to the Canadian healthcare system, because I'm pretty sure, based on what he said earlier, if you walk in the emergency room like you got a broken leg, they'll probably just shoot you right in the head, put you down like a horse that's done with the racetrack. So pretty scary stuff here. Not, again, building a lot of tension, hopefully, for his big closer.
They literally say diversity is our strength before they open the game. Okay, what does that mean and why is it true? Shut up! No, I'm not going to shut up. You're telling me to accept a slogan, so it's incumbent on you to explain what the slogan means and why it makes sense. That seems like a common sense rule. If
he started out very jolly, and now he's quite angry at this point here.
Forcing something down my throat, tell me how it tastes before I swallow it. Oh, shut up, racist. No, not going to. Not racist. I'm not going to shut up. Answer the freaking question.
Great impression there of an annoying liberal. Such annoying people.
You weird cross-dressing prime minister.
Another dig at the prime minister.
And the last thing I'll say, and I will stop at this because I'm sure I've gone beyond the time allotted. Keep going! I'm out of control! Unleashed in Canada!
Great joke there. Okay, so that is his big. Oh, that was the big end punchline. So he went on kind of a crazy tangent, and then did an impression of the audience going, "It's out of control," which and then he laughed, which means I know that it's funny. So that was very good there. Very funny stuff from Tucker.
The last thing I'll say, which also may be controversial because it sounds like a parochial concern or some sort of
here's the closer.
Weird religious thing or something, and it's not. But take a look at what they're doing to your Christians. And I say this for I am a Christian, but that's not why I'm telling you this. I'm telling you this because there's kind of no more inoffensive and peaceful group in the world than the Christians. In fact, there isn't.
Okay, that's a very funny joke there. Saying that there's no more peaceful and inoffensive group than the Christians. Obviously, that is a joke. He must understand some history of the Crusades.
Their religion commands them to turn the other cheek and to put the concerns of others above their own concerns. So if you have a problem with those precepts, explain it to me. Speak slowly so I can understand. I think every person in this room, regardless of your faith, can agree, yeah, I'm for that. I wish I was more like that. That's good. We need more of those people in society. Serve others for the sake of service. People who pray for their enemies. Who does that? Who would pray for an enemy? No one, except the
I pray for my enemies.
Christians, and they do. They're commanded to. So if you're hassling that group, maybe you've got another agenda that we should be concerned about, even if we're not in that group. If we burn 90 of their churches to the ground, and the prime minister and his little weird buddies are endorsing that, burning churches, if you're on the side of burning churches, let me just say, I don't need any other facts of the case, you're on the wrong side. If you're throwing preachers in prison for preaching the Christian gospel, not for hurting anyone, not for making pipe bombs, not for trying to castrate other people's children, not for importing millions of people into your country who are not going to have work.
Haven't heard about the castrating
Just for the crime
thing.
of preaching the Christian gospel, you go to jail. At the same time, when they're encouraging your kids to do drugs, and not just fentanyl, but weed, don't raise your hand if you have a 15-year-old son, but come up to me after and tell me what you think of legalized weed. For real. And if you have a 15-year-old son, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They did that to you and to your son on purpose. And so in a country like that, in a world like that, if you think that preaching the gospel is so dangerous that the people who do it need to be in prison in shackles, you're serving someone other than the people of Canada, if you know what I mean. That's
I didn't know what the joke was there, but the crowd gave a big applause break, which means that they are laughing, which means that I know it's funny, which means it's time to laugh.
Really scary. And I don't care how much they dress it up in the passive-aggressive, self-help language of the modern left. Well, it's really about public safety. Every time I turn on your freaking television.
That is what they sound like. I fucking hate the modern left, guys. I do. Fuck them.
Television shows, everything's about public safety, which is a euphemism for hard-edged fascism, actually. And frankly, I'm a little bit more comfortable with the old-fashioned variety, where guys in tight uniforms goose-step through your town, because at least you know who you're fighting. And you know what it's going to take to liberate your town. Get rid of these people and everything will be okay. But when they show up and they're therapists with advanced degrees, and they look at you in the face and say, no, actually, little Dylan just needs more fentanyl.
Callback. So there's a callback to the thing he was talking about the fentanyl joke from the beginning there. So great callback, very funny stuff.
Little Dylan's actually a girl. And we're gonna, yes, he's a girl. Sorry, she's a girl. She's a girl. And if you don't agree, well, maybe we may have to remove Dylan to more care-affirming custody. Oh, you're gonna take my kids away because I don't want to castrate them. They'll never say that, of course. Because clear language is their enemy, because clear language exposes who they really are. They're not people who are trying to help you, they are people who are trying to hurt you. Anyone who goes after your children, anyone who encourages you to have fewer children, is trying to make you extinct. It's literally that simple. And it's only in the advanced West that we don't see that. Try that crap in Bulgaria. Try that in Serbia. How do you think that would fly in Serbia? We're just going to give little Voldoc some fentanyl.
Yeah, definitely Serbia, definitely a much better, more reasonable country than Canada there. Great joke here.
And we think, you know, he may be, you wouldn't even get to the next sentence before you got shot. Because you're trying to kill someone's kids. And your average Serb, whatever you think of them.
So that's a very funny, kind of a funny joke there. In Canada, generally talks about people are very repressed and don't do anything or talk about anything. But in Serbia, if you try anything, they'll shoot you in the throat. So, but then he says, you know, he's implying it's a better place to live. Very funny kind of cognitive dissonance thing here going on. Very funny stuff.
Doesn't have generations of therapy talk that acts as a logical intermediary in his brain and prevents him from seeing what's actually going on here. They're trying to kill my kids. I'm the father. I won't allow it. I'll lay my life down to prevent it. It's literally that simple. So I'll stop with this. The answer,
oh, here we go.
Before you take any sort of action or imagine that some election is going to fix things, comma, which it's not, spoiler alert, because this country, like every country, very much, and maybe especially including my country, has a lot of frauds in that business. Sorry, it does. I would know. It's the one thing I know a lot about. before any of that takes place, you need to change inside. Your attitudes need to change. And your timidity needs to be replaced by bravery. The muddled thinking that you have about this stuff, the average normal Canadian, just like the average normal American, sees this stuff pop up on his phone or he's on X and he's like, I can't believe it, the world's going to hell. But it's scattershot. There's one here, one there, one there. No, it's not scattershot. It's of a piece. It's of a piece. They're all connected. And it's aimed at you. And if you don't agree, tell me how I'm wrong. But I'm not wrong. I'm right. And so the first thing that you need to do before changing anything in your country is to change everything about your heart. You have to be ready for a contest where the stakes are existential, which they are. And with that, I will stop. Thank you.
Okay, a bit of an experimental closer there. There he goes. Wow. Just kind of ended on it was more of a inspirational speech there. What an incredible stand-up comedy special from Tucker Carlson. Definitely one of the best comedians working today. I started out watching the special. I was so excited to watch a stand-up special, and Tucker seemed so excited to do stand-up, and he was jolly and doing jokes. But now I understand by the end of the special why it's called the Sworn Enemy Tour. And when I was at the beginning, I wasn't really thinking about enemies. But at the end of this special, I realized that my enemies are numerous, and they live in Canada, and they are liberals, and they're constantly attacking me. Even though they're very weak, they're also very strong. And I feel very scared and at the same time empowered as a white man. So after this special, most comedy specials are just, you just kind of laugh and enjoy the evening. But after this one, I'm definitely considering leaving beautiful Los Angeles and moving to Bulgaria and finding a nice Bulgarian wife who is blonde and white, and raising a whole bunch of white children together. And if anyone questions that, I know that I can shoot them in the face. So definitely reconsidering my life. And if you guys have enemies, make sure you pray for them. And please watch another episode of Jokes Explained. I'm going to go do a lot more research on the internet and watch more Tucker Carlson videos. If you guys like this video, please like and subscribe. We'll be back with more videos like this in the future. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.